today we've got a group of very special people, translators who come from all over Europe, who are all part of a group on Facebook called Standing Out. And they're a special group for three main reasons. One is because in their dialogue together, they explore values, attitudes and beliefs about work, not just the technical or mechanical aspects. The second reason they're important and special is because they have generally a fairly positive attitude to life. They focus on what's going well in their work rather than the endless possible sources of complaint which tended, before this group was founded, to dominate the online scene. And the third thing is that they've built up a very special atmosphere together. They speak to each other respectfully. We don't have any trolls, no real arguments. We have lots of debate, lots of disagreement, but people speak to each other courteously, and that again makes this group fairly unique online. 1, 2, 3, and again. Right. I hope you like the suit, first of all. I had a... Sorry? Not sure. Well, it was a toss-up between this and the full Welsh rugby costume. As you know, Wales are about to beat Australia this afternoon in a famous victory. But I thought in the end the sight of my rippling muscles would be too much for you, and that's just the men. So decided to come in a suit. And I mentioned to you before we began that I would be asking you for an extraordinary fact. I hope most of you have come along with an extraordinary fact about you. I'm going to tell you an extraordinary fact about me, first of all, which is that for 2 years, between 1993 and 1995, I ate nothing but lentils for 2 whole years. I was living in Africa, in Eritrea, a country which was then at the dawn of a new era, now a very troubled place. And I lived in a school which was 9 hours by jeep from the capital, which of course is called? Asmara. Very good, who said that? Ah, okay, which was once an Italian colony. Very good. And so 9 hours from the capital by jeep, 4 hours on foot from the nearest town, and the only food we had was aid food. So we had lentils every single day, lunch and dinner, bread, dry bread in the morning with tea, and we had oranges once every month when our truck went to the local town, came back laden with oranges, no fridges, so we just ate oranges for 2 days and had a vitamin C high, then went back to lentils. And that was for 22 weeks at a time until we went to the capital for a holiday. Then we ate pizzas and all kinds of food and went back to lentil land after that. Funny thing is, if you have to eat one thing every day for 2 years, actually you can do a lot worse than lentils. So that's the extraordinary thing about me, at least the only one that you don't know, because most of my life has now been published on the page. What I'd like you to do is to speak to the person next to you and tell them what extraordinary fact about you you've brought along today. Just spend a few minutes together. Okay, who has got for us an interesting fact about their neighbour, which they've just heard? Who would like to share? I hope these are all publishable.
Yeah, I'm sat next to the local Felicity, and she is with the Burgess. A free Burgess of the city of Colchester.
A free?
Burgess. Yeah, apparently it's something that's been passed down through her family, and in the olden days meant that, among other things, she didn't have to pay tax, which as a freelancer would be cool, but apparently that doesn't apply anymore. But she can hunt polecats in the cities, within the city fields, which is also
My neighbour is something that I want all the time. She's trained as a reflexologist. Oh. And I know I want it all the time, and I want her to come and live with me. And then we can work together, but she can keep me in trim. Keep me human. Because being a translator is so curved and difficult.
Right, Zoe.
This is Sally, and Sally is an FA qualified football coach.
Peter next to me has never seen Star Wars.
So we've all got these extraordinary backgrounds. What I'm going to do today is talk about 3 or 4 things. One is the journey that brought me here today. The second one is to ask you a little bit about your journey within the group as individuals so far. The third thing is to talk about the group as a collective and what it stands for. And the fourth thing is to think a little bit about where we might go from here. So my story begins in 1964, but I'm not going to tell you all of that part. Let's fast forward to 2009, when I first came to France. Just before that, I'd been working in Bangladesh. At the end of a long career as an English teacher, and then a teacher trainer, and then a trainer, and finally as a consultant in the Ministry of Education, where I was in charge of a national training program, where we had meetings every week, very bureaucratic meetings, talking about how we were going to train 55,000 teachers by 2021, for example. And I realized that I'd come a very long way from my start, which was in a classroom, talking to people, being with people. And I discovered that this wasn't at all where I wanted to have ended up, even though by then I was 44, 45. And I don't know if anyone here has ever been in a job which they absolutely hated. Has anyone had that experience? Okay, let's Volker at the back. What was your job that you hated?
I was an in-house translator.
Okay. And what did you hate about it?
Every second.
Okay, so you have that experience of watching the clock tick once per hour and advance by 1 second. Okay. Who else has been in a job? Very different job. Helen, what about you?
I was stuck in a room once for 2 years with no windows, very small room.
Is this a prison or a job?
No, it was an auction house, and bidders who were unable to attend the auctions would come and place absentee bids. They'd come in, I'd be sitting down, they'd come in, and some of them would just stick their business card in front of my face and say, "Hello, I'm whoever, place this bid for me." And you're sitting there and you just have to do that. And with no windows and just a fax machine in the corner going, whir, 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 tick, tick, tick. It was horrible. It was the no windows that were the worst of it.
Right.
2 years.
2 years. And anyone else? Yes, David.
I had a summer job doing telesales to German companies, and I don't really speak German.
That does sound quite difficult.
It didn't go so well.
So as many of you will know then, what I had, this experience I had for, and it was a 2 or 3 year job, which I took for all the wrong reasons. I took because they offered me a salary of 12,000 euros a month, tax-free, which tempted me, as it would tempt many people, at least it tempted the me back then, with business class flights. And I just thought this was too good to turn down. And I learned the hard way that nothing is too good to turn down, especially when it's based only on money. And being somebody whose life is fairly centered, as you now know, around work and the value of doing good work, that was an extremely difficult experience. And I went on a kind of spiral downwards until I realized I had to get out of that job. My contract came to an end, and I thought, what shall I do next? I don't want to stay in education because the only jobs that were offered to me were at a similar level. I couldn't go back just to being a teacher. So I thought, I'll go to France, where my parents had a house. And they'd been talking about this for quite a long time, and I hadn't really paid attention, but I suddenly became very interested in the village where they were living and said, tell me more about it. And in the end, I ended up buying a house in that village and had no idea what I was going to do. I thought I might become a gardener or a baker, even though I can neither bake nor garden. And I just thought, I've got to get out of this job, have to go there, have to find myself a new life. Also, a small matter of a divorce after 20 years, which played into this mix, so not an easy time. And then somebody said, you speak languages, why don't you become a translator? An offhand, maybe it was my mum who said that. So I began to research and found out that there were correspondence courses, one of which I did while still in Bangladesh. And in my last 6 months, I was physically in Bangladesh and mentally already in France. I spent 3 or 4 hours every day listening to the radio, gelling up again on my French, which had got obviously after 25 years, a little bit rusty, kept vocabulary books, highlighted, printed out magazines highlighted words, listed them, and really spent 6 months of very intensive language work. So that by the time I came to France, I could read as well as I can read now, and I could listen as well as I can listen now. My speaking, obviously, was a bit rusty. So that's when I began. I spent the first 3 weeks in Provence, absolutely amazed at the light and the sun and everything that people know Provence for. After that, I thought, right, now I have to get down to the job of finding some real clients. I had nobody down there already. I didn't know anybody, apart from the local grocer, and he wasn't likely to buy my services. And I went on pros, like everybody does, sent off my CV around France to about 400 people, expecting to get 400 replies by the next morning, all saying, well, obviously we've been waiting for you, and we'll make you our top translator. Funnily enough, didn't happen, okay? I got no replies, maybe 1 or 2 kind of polite acknowledgements, and that was it. And then, after about 2 or 3 months, I suddenly thought, I've made an entirely wrong decision. I can't do this. Nobody wants my services. And so I pushed open the door of the local unemployment office, thinking, I can't go back to teaching, because teaching was being paid at a very low rate in the small village halls, and I didn't want to go back 20 years in my career. And I went into this employment office where there was a young woman, about 25 years old, kind of doing her nails, who looked at me with barely disguised disdain and flicked through a few files and said, we've got shelf stacking and storage in the local supermarket. And as you can imagine, when I went in there already, I wasn't feeling that confident. And when I saw that, I thought, this is terrible. I've left this high-flying career. I've got no clients. And now all I can do is work in a supermarket at the minimum wage in France. At 45 years old, when you've been to Oxford and when you've had all this kind of well-paid career behind you, it's a very difficult thing to face. But that day, or maybe the next day, one of those clients, one of those seeds that I planted, came good and sent me a small text. That was my first ever text. It was about nuclear power, a subject about which I know little and care, sorry Claire, but Claire even less, even though it's very important in the world. And I struggled through 3 hours on clay, different kinds of clay. I did learn the word argillaceous or argillaceous, which was a great word I've used many, many times since in parties. But I struggled through this and again thought, well, this is terrible. I've got my first client, wonderful, but is this what translation means? Working on stuff that you don't understand, trying to find every second word I had to look up in the dictionary. And of course, even when I looked them up, as we all know, because I'm not at all an expert in that, I wasn't sure that I found one of the 4 or 5 available versions. So that was how it all began. And then other agencies found their way to me, and there was something about the way I worked with them. I answered quickly and gave them decent enough translations that it began to take off. And so by the end of that year, 2009, things were beginning to roll along. And then throughout 2010, the same thing happened, and I began to find that I had a little bit too much work coming in from agencies and also from a few direct clients who I'd met at social events. And so I began to cherry pick. I began to choose those things which I liked and turn down maybe half of what was being offered to me. And at the time, I had a friend who said to me, she was a businesswoman, and she said to me, it's absolutely crazy to be turning down stuff a year after you started. You should be outsourcing or delegating some of this work. So I began by 2011 to do that. Found people, and some of them, actually there's nobody here from the beginning, but Jill I began to work with quite early on. Who else? Davina also, and Angie. All have been about 4 years now working together. And of course, they did excellent work, as did all the other people who've worked for me. And so I began by 2011 to have this business, which was kind of turning around quite nicely every year. And in the best year, I think in 2012, 2013, that meant about 250,000 euros worth of work was coming to the company. Not all to me, unfortunately, I did have to pay some of these translators for some of their work, but it meant that the business itself was kind of going quite nicely. The funny thing about it was that I was living in what we now all know is called a blue ocean. Blue ocean theory is when you're operating in your own world, you have your own clients, and you don't actually care what the competition is doing. So the ocean, the water around you is blue. You're swimming around, interacting with your clients, no idea what's happening in the outside world. You don't actually care about what rival translators are doing. Red ocean theory, by contrast, is when you're in a competitive space and you're pitching yourself against other people, trying to outdo them for rates, for example. And of course, the water turns red because everyone's pecking and biting at each other. It's like dogfish eat dogfish. So I happened, without even knowing the term existed, to be living in this blue ocean. Had my clients. I'd heard of prose, because I got some clients through there, but I'd never heard of Chris Durbin. I'd never heard of ATA or ITI or anybody. So I had zero contact at all. And it was only in 2013, at the end of the year, that one of the people working for me, who I still salute, called Anna De Silva, who some of you might have seen her name on the water cooler, said to me, there's this thing called the water cooler on Facebook. You might like it. You might, translators talk together and share ideas. So I went to see, and of course I saw what was a lively forum going on. But I saw two things which were less exciting. One was that people seemed to be complaining an awful lot. And the second is that the tone of conversation between some of the people that day, my first ever day on this site, was quite aggressive. Now, obviously, I've seen lots of that around. I know it exists. But I was quite surprised to see people who seemingly didn't know each other talking in that way. So I began to post the first time ever on December the 1st, 2013, and found that when I was posting, there were some likes. And we all know that likes, for those of us who live in Facebook land, are like gold dust. And more importantly, that there was engagement, that people were interacting with what I said and interacting with each other. And it was only 2 or 3 months after that I decided to go solo, like in a boy band, and start off my own page. By that time, I'd written every day on the water cooler. I'd written 1 or 2 posts. So much so that I got 1 or 2 messages saying, can't you tone it down a little bit? You're speaking a little bit too much. And not being the type to tone it down a bit, I thought, right, okay, I'll start my own page where I can do exactly what I want. And so I did, and people followed from the water cooler page, and I began to post every single day. And that was where the second story begins, because in a sense, I had the first story went from my beginning in May 2009, on which time I had nothing on my CV at all, up until 2013. Those 4 years of simply building up a business. The second story, which has completely changed my entire life, began in 2013, December, so less than 2 years ago. Or was that fewer? Fewer? Less? Anyway, fewer than 2 years ago. And that's when the standing out page began. And what suddenly seemed to happen is that around that page, things began to pop up into my life without any idea of what would come. There was a woman called Nicole Adams, who's a very established translator in Australia, who wrote to me suggesting that we do this thing called The Bright Side, which went on to win a prize for prose. And she suggested working together on this simply because she'd seen what I was posting on the water cooler before I even began my page. I had a phone call one day from a person who said, my name is Chris Durbin, and I've noticed you, and we could do a little text together. And I ran downstairs in my house saying, you can't believe just who's called me. If George Clooney had called me, I think the reaction would have been muted. And so we worked together on a text. Then somebody said, we need somebody to go to Chicago to work on a panel with Corinne McKay. And that popped up into my life. Andrew Bell, who's the moderator of the water cooler, very kindly put my name forward for that. And then ITI called me and said, we'd like somebody to do a masterclass in our conference. And by the way, you'll have to do a talk as well in the conference. Then I published a book. All of this happened in the space of under 1 year. Siegfried from Alexandria and Lucy from ECPD contacted me to do webinars. I had a few articles that came out in the ITI journal and in other publications. And then finally, the magazine, which I've called The Clearing, came out towards the end of that year. So that was quite a busy year for me. Then the Standing Out page turned into a group last January. And then the Holistic Translator series of webinars came out. So all of that came around in about 18 months, probably the busiest and the most fulfilling and expansive 18 months of my life. And the funny thing is, all of this has come about despite the fact that I consider myself a good translator, and that's it. Sometimes I'm very good on a Monday and Wednesday. If I've had a glass of wine, I can sometimes hit excellent, but I consider myself a good standard translator. And yet, all of these things have come about. I've met people. There are people in this room who I've worked with who are better translators than I am, even though I'm getting better and I spend a lot of time on my craft and spent a lot of money going for training, and I think, like all of us, we're all improving. But it's not that. And so the whole quest of standing out has been to find out, well, if it's not that, if it's not pure quality, and I've seen pure quality at work. I've been to a workshop led by Chris Durbin, and I've seen what people who live in a different stratosphere from me can do with translation. Ripping apart texts, putting in slogans, taking out whole paragraphs, reorganizing everything. I've seen what it's like at the top, and I'm certainly not there. So if it's not that, what is it? And that's been, in a sense, the motivation for this quest the whole time. How is it that an ordinary person, and I count myself very much as that, can do fairly extraordinary things? I think in that is the secret of what can be shared with everybody else. So the story of standing out is not about look at me and what I've done, but what is it in the process that I've followed that can be extended to everyone. Not everybody wants to do the same things as me, or be in the same magazines, or God forbid drive the same car, but everybody can move ahead from where they are and discover some fairly extraordinary things. This is where the idea of a radio comes in. I think that in a sense we're all like radio sets, and we're tuned at any time in our lives to one frequency. But if, like me, you have an internet radio at home, you know that within that one physical box are at least 10,000 different frequencies that you can turn into. I turn into France Inter and Radio 4, so I'm kind of stuck on these two frequencies in my cultural life. But I can, if I want, tune into Radio Jazz Tirana from Albania, or some talk show from Vladivostok, or some Christian show from America, or Buddhist radio from Sri Lanka. They're all there in that box. And one of the things that strikes me as I look at that radio every day is that we're all in that position. We're all people with 1,000 different frequencies that we can tune into if we choose. Okay? We're not stuck exactly where we are. And I think in a sense that we're all in a fairly comfortable place. At least the vibe that I get from reading what you write is that we're all doing quite nicely, all finding new clients. But I see all of us, including me, as being people in a living room where everything is quite comfortable. You have your favorite armchair, a glass of something on the arm, your little dog at your feet, with a fire crackling away in the hearth, and everything is going very, very nicely. And it's very tempting to stay in that space and just let things carry on until we retire, and then we do some even more gardening or more baking, and then through to the end. But I think that, in a sense, in every living room that we're in, there are doors leading off in different directions, into places that we can't even imagine exist. Doors which we've never pushed, doors which are locked for some reason because of some of the beliefs that we inherited and kept with us all our lives. Other doors that we don't even know exist. Maybe if you push this book in the bookshelf, the wall will turn and a whole different door will come out and a corridor leading off to somewhere that you don't know about. And I think that for all of us, there are those possibilities. So in a sense, what's happened to me this year, coming out of the unknown, because all of these things I listed came from nowhere. I didn't ask Chris Durbin to call me. I didn't ask Nicole Adams to suggest this book. They're just simply from being out there. And I've often wondered what it is about this page that has kept people coming back. Partly because I can write a little bit, but partly I think because people have a sense of somebody who's tuned in to a good frequency for them, and that those people then want some of that for themselves, not my frequency, but their frequency. So they've seen a person who seems to be having a good time in their job, who's discovering different aspects. And that's what I'm finding at the moment, especially as the group is growing and changing, that I'm in a place where the different facets of my existence, from teaching, from writing, from translating, from revising, and even now from speaking, are all coming out into play. And as I fit into those roles which belong only to me in this respect, then people are getting a sense of somebody who is aligned between the person they are and the person they want to be. And it's that narrowing of the gap between the person that you can be and the person that you are now that we're interested in. Of course, along that journey, there have been lots of ups and downs. It hasn't been a linear path to fulfillment. There have been some hostilities from different quarters. There have been times when I've engaged in those, and there have been times when I've done things which I certainly wouldn't do if I had my time again. Because it was a very rapid learning of how to handle social media. The first time I woke up at 4 in the morning and found myself in the middle of what is now, I think, called a Twitter storm, where you see tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet, all of them talking about you, and not very nicely, was a very difficult experience. And of course, your first reaction is what? Is to jump in there and defend yourself and maybe even attack back. But of course now, with the wisdom of a whole year of being on social media, I've realized that that's not only predictable, but also even welcome in a weird sort of way, because it shows that you're out there and that you're making people talk. Like, no publicity is bad publicity. And the result is clear, at least for me. The fact that you're all here, all these wonderful people have come from different parts of the world. We've got people from Germany. We've got David, who's come from Canada. I think that warrants a round of applause, certainly. We've got Joao, who's come in from Portugal, just for this event. And Sinead, who's come from Scandinavia. Who else has come from afar? From France? Yes? From? Italy, okay. And also from France, Germany. From Germany, okay. So we have so many countries represented. All of them have come together. So that, for me, is already a great result. And seeing what's happening now on the page and the interaction between people is for me, amazing. It's kind of gone way beyond. I have the impression that I'm driving a car with about 2,000 steering wheels, trying to keep control of things. But it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful to see the energy and the sharing. And I think that together we've actually changed at least the online scene for translators and offering something which is quite different. So that's about my journey up until this moment and this meeting today. What I'd like you to think and talk about now is your journey as an individual within this group. And I'd like you to think, just take a minute silence first of all, to think about something which has changed for you since you've been part of this group. Now I know we've got people here who only joined the group 2 days ago. So I don't expect much to have changed in their lives. But for the rest of you, I'd like you just to think about this. Can you think of, or put your finger on 1 or 2 concrete things that you've done differently, or people you've met? It could be people, things, groups that you've done differently as a result of being part of Standing Out. So speak about that together now in the same small pairs and groups for a couple of minutes. Okay, so who has an example this time for themselves of how being in this group has brought about even the smallest but a concrete change in their working practice or in their life? Tizzy, always brave.
Well, jump in, all feet, flying. I'm one of these people. I'm quite old now, and I've built up a perfectly comfortable way of living. And the other day, somebody said, "I've recommended you for this guy, this architect who needs his website translating." And I think if I hadn't been in standing, I might have thought, "Oh, I can't be bothered. I don't need the work." But I said yes, and it's turned out to be quite lucrative. And he's a nice guy, and it makes me feel...
And you're getting married? No. Well, that would be a big change.
I haven't met him yet. It's all virtual, this stuff. But I work basically for 2 agencies which provide most of my living. And as I was saying to Angie, with somebody like Chris Durbin, or somebody who I met in a previous life when I was starting out, who said that one day she lost 3 agencies, 3 big clients in 1 week. And you just never know. They seem totally solid, and she thought they would be forever. Suddenly they disappeared, and she said, this happens in life. And it made me think back to that time when she said that, and I thought, it would be just good to have that one extra wheel, the one extra steering wheel that you mentioned, one of the 20,000 you've got lined up, because you just never know. And I don't think I would have done it hadn't I been part of this extremely vibrant group. Thank you all.
Okay, so to go back to our living room metaphor, you decided to get up out of the armchair and explore one of those corridors. That's fantastic. Okay. Anybody else have an experience they'd like to share? Yes, Jane.
My experience is that this is the largest group of translators I've ever been in. And last week I met the largest previous group of translators I've ever been in, which is about 40 people. And before that it was 3. So I've got the confidence to come out and actually meet people and get out of my translator box and meet all the people who I've been associating with. And not just translators, I've been to groups of people doing other things that I'm kind of slightly interested in, that I think I might get clients from. And I have had clients from them just by going out and actually talking to people. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Fantastic. So a social blossoming. That's great. Okay, anybody else? Yes, Natalie.
But I won't speak as well as you would, but anyway, I think what we were discussing in our little group is that perhaps standing out, I've been a translator for this year for 20 years, wow. So it's a long time, and maybe standing out without realizing it has allowed me to stop and think and take a step back and look at what I was doing, because I think I started and I think I was quite successful from a start, and work was coming and coming and coming, and then I had children, and I kept taking everything that was coming my way and that I could take, and without realizing really what I enjoyed doing and what I didn't enjoy doing. So I think with standing out and with the group talking about what it is that you should go for, and what motivates you, what drives you, and what makes you happy. Maybe that's what it's allowed me to do. Stop, turn down some jobs I didn't really like, or some clients I didn't really like, and then maybe turn towards what I would like to do, after 20 years in this job. So, it's maybe this transition and feeling a little bit more surrounded and secure in the knowledge that, it's feasible. So, thank you to everyone. Because,
I think what I get from that is the sense, and it's something that's very important to this group, of moving out of autopilot zone into realizing that there are choices around, you can decide what to do and when to do it and who to do it with. So that's really great to hear. Thank you. Yes, Adriana.
Moi? Do I stand up?
Do you stand up or stand down?
Do I stand up in order to stand out? Okay. Okay, so I'm Adriana, because I don't think anybody knows me here. I think I will pick up on that refocus thing. That's the main thing that I got from Stand Out. I have been a translator for 20 years as well this year. However, my journey has been a bit more tortuous because I have been wearing too many hats. After the translating hat, there's been the academic hat for many years. There's been this idea of bridging the gap between the profession and the academia, where I put a lot of energy. There's been now this refocusing where I have decided that after all, what I really enjoy doing is translating. So, but standing out has been an incredible contribution, has been a really, really important contribution for me to actually just help refocus and just say, okay, well, I came over to England when I read that there's this woman called George who said it's never too late to be what you might have been. That took me to England, and now it's taking me back to my roots, which is roots as a translator. So standing out has got a not small part in this. So thank you very much.
Wow. Amazing for me to hear these stories and to see the effect on people. Very moving. Anybody else? Yes, Christelle. We'll come to Frank.
Hi, I'm Christelle. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Andrew, because you changed my life. You really did. As you may know, I launched a new career in January. I've been working on it for the past 2 years, and I created Coaching for Translators. And I was created Coaching for Translators. I trained as a coach, and I wanted to diversify, try something new after 15 years in translation. And I looked online for people who had similar values, and I found you, and I found the group, and I was really, really excited about it. And really the way you changed my life is that you enabled me to make my dream come true in such a big way by giving me a platform to share my posts and things that I wrote. And people shared those posts, and important people read those posts. And the first thing that happened back in May, just a few weeks after one article that I wrote, someone contacted me from Oslo, from the National Association of Translators in Norway, to ask me to give a talk. And I'm going at the end of this month to give my first talk about that article that I wrote. And then Lucy got in touch with the CPD webinar, and we talked about doing a course. And I created the Future Proof Translator, which we're offering in December, and then in January. And that was a big dream. It really was. At first, I wanted to write a book. It was a book in my head, but when Lucy contacted me, I thought, well, it's going to be.
The book will come.
The book will come. And I thought, this is fantastic. This is just within weeks of dreaming about it. Then Marta Stelmazak contacted me last week to ask me to give a talk for the Chartered Institute of Linguists in November to a group of interpreters. Again, after another post that I wrote for ECPD webinars, actually. And I've been invited to give that talk, which we talked about yesterday, I think, or the day before, in Prague. Yeah. And I was really proud to have my photo next to yours. I just thought, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. So I'm going to Prague. I'm going to meet you there again in April.
I thought, I'm next to Christelle, wow!
And I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity today to actually practice, to talk to a group of people, such a big group of people. And I stood up last because actually I was shaking on my chair. I was like, oh my God, I've got to do this. So now I know I can do it because I've got these 3 talks coming and I didn't know if I could do it. So now I know. I'm going to be okay. So thank you, Andrew, because this is just amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
I think we had Frank as well.
Yeah, sorry, just briefly. I mean, I
I can't say that the group has changed a lot for me in a way, because I've always been kind of fairly entrepreneurial, and I always wanted to do my own thing anyway, never really taking much notice of what people thought. But this is the first group I actually feel I can do that comfortably, because I always found it in groups of translators in the past, I find a lot of translators to be very conservative and very inward looking, and so if you do something a little bit different, you do feel really like the odd one out. And here is fine to be the odd one out, because we're all different and we can all be what we want to be. So that's good. Thank you.
I think you've just given me a new slogan: standing out where everyone is the odd one out. Okay, we're going to move on to a different section now. That's our individual stories, and it's really wonderful to hear how, and I'm sure there are more stories here in the room, how people have made decisions, all of them different, in relation to where they were, not in relation to where I was. Because, as we know, the point of this group is not in any way to try and emulate another person, but to find out who you are, but to push that to the very limit. And as we move on to that, I'd like us to think now, in the next section, about what the group stands for. What does standing out stand for? Because on the one hand, we know it's a lovely space where we can talk with very friendly people and come together and know that we won't be criticized or shot down or competed against by other people. And that's one of the, for me, that's one of the things that I'm proudest of in this group. But it also stands for a kind of philosophy, which maybe sometimes gets lost or is there under the surface as we go about our daily posts, because there's so much excitement now with 20 posts appearing every day on the page, all of them explosions of enthusiasm and joy, which in itself is a wonderful thing. But at the same time, it's good to touch base sometimes with what it is that the group stands for in terms of its philosophy, if you can use that word, its values and its attitudes. Now, on the first sheet, you'll see there's one handout, if you've all got access to a folder. So on that first page, I'm going to ask you this time to work in a slightly bigger group of 3 or 4 people. And I want you, now this isn't about saying what we believe in, because that obviously for some people might be a difficult one step too far. But see if we can agree between all 4, with one person writing in the first instance, on 12 things we can agree, broadly speaking, about the philosophy of this group. Okay? For example, I think we can all agree that we believe in setting out your own vision of what you want to be as a translator and not necessarily trying to copy other people. That's one element of the philosophy. What I'd like you to do is try and work together and identify up to 12 of those. We may not get as far as 12, we may only get as far as 11, for example, but try and do that together and see if you can agree. This isn't a kind of manifesto, but it's that kind of spirit. What do we stand for? So if you wouldn't mind turning around, some of you, so that you make groups of at least 4 people.
Everyone's doing French except me.
Oh my God.
Quick,
Don't feel left
get
out.
writing.
So what does it stand for? The community.
I think so. Yeah, it's a. You really do get a community feeling from the group. It's basically a place where it's okay to let your personal life spill over into your professional life and vice versa.
And maybe we should say what we were talking about earlier, that it is a platform for people who start and people who have already got a career.
Personal life, the personal life and the life as a professional that mixed together.
But also translation events, because for example the thing in Barcelona or in Prague, any of us can say, okay, I'm going there, I'm taking part in this, is anyone coming?
In general, it's finding out what's actually possible in terms of specialization, in terms of actually being able to shape your career in real time.
The principles of success, which are often discussed, are applicable to other areas of your life and not just translation.
And that's very much standing out thing, the holistic approach, isn't it?
The principles of success.
I'm not sure whether you got to 12 or 1, 3, 10, that's pretty good. 14, all right. Okay. So we're thinking very broadly then here about what this group stands for, what it believes in its practice as a group, or in its philosophy about translation and about freelance life and about life in general. Who can give me one of those? They don't have to be in any particular order, but who can give me one of the pillars of standing out? Yes, Caroline.
The first one I've got is, it stands for putting your head above the parapet because you know you won't be shot down.
So is it okay to say providing security for people to be themselves? Is that what you mean? Openness. Okay. And then openness, Jane, in which?
It was just you can be anybody in the group. What a couple of other people have said, anybody is allowed to say anything. Anybody from any background, anybody of any level of translator.
Okay, so everyone has equal value.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very important. The first communist group on Facebook.
I got one word now: confidence.
Confidence. Okay. Giving people the confidence again to be themselves, and to make mistakes, and to say things which won't be shot down or criticized by other people. Okay. It's important.
And that comes from respect.
Respect. Okay. Yes, respect for each person, especially those of us who remember being newbies, even if that might have been 20 years ago, and seeing that no question is stupid. I can remember once when I did my master's degree in education, we had a teacher there who was a brilliant teacher, and whatever people said, he would kind of lean forward and say to them, he influenced me a great deal, and say to them, that's really interesting. So he would say to people, for example, we were all about language learning. He would say, so why do we learn languages? And somebody would say, they'd think really hard and they'd say, to speak with other people. Okay. Now, so many teachers could have said, yeah, duh. But he would say, that's amazing. What do you mean by that? And that kind of atmosphere of being there and giving people that platform to speak has become very important also for this group. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Clive.
Lack of aggression, bullying, flaming, personal attacks.
Okay. Non-aggression.
Non-aggression.
Yes. I think that came out of my shock, I think, when I first came online and saw the level. And even now when I go and venture, very rarely, I peep my head into other groups, there are times when I'm amazed at the level of what passes for frank talk, but for me seems to be incredibly aggressive. I think that comes from my own personal position because I hate confrontation of any kind. And so I probably impose that on the group, but obviously it has benefits as well, advantages as well. Yes, Adriana.
It's the positivity, the no ranting.
Yes. And I think that by positivity, we also avoid being what we call a Pollyanna group. We don't say everything is sunshine and flowers and fish, but we... I don't know where that came from. Anyway, I think I was thinking of flying butterflies, and then it became fish. Sorry. Anyway, yes, it's a group where I think people do, especially in the new problem page thing. We see that people are beginning to bring things which are dilemmas and challenges for them. And I hope to see a lot more of that. But it's always done in a way where we think about the solution and never making the people who put those things forward feel stupid. And yes, I think I feel very strongly that focusing on what works in life is a much more constructive, not just to be positive, but because it simply has a different effect on you, on your mind, and even on your body, cellular structure of your body. When you're in that more positive space, then your mind opens up for a start. We all know that when people close down, when they focus on what's going wrong, what happens is that people go round and round in circles. So they become in this kind of logical, analytical framework. They can't find a way out. So what happens is that they talk around the problem, and people say, yeah, I had that too. Okay, we might have some concrete strategies offered, but usually the problem doesn't go away, and the next day we see the same problem coming up in a different format. Because there's no creativity when you're feeling angry, simple as that. When you're angry or frustrated, that creative part of you, which can only exist when you're feeling enthusiastic, doesn't find expression, unless, of course, you're a tortured artist, in which case you can spill it all out on the canvas and leave works for posterity while cutting off limbs of your own body. But it's simply the truth that if you're in an angry space, and if you're encouraging people around you to be in an angry space, you won't find your way out of a paper bag. Simple as that. It doesn't happen. That thing only happens when you relax and switch off, and then maybe even leave your working desk. Then new ideas, sudden thoughts pop up. And those come from the unknown, and those are creative. So they only come when we're relaxed. So in fact, it's fairly mathematical that we can say that if you have a group where people are only talking around problems, there'll be very, very few creative solutions that come out of that. And when you have a group where the atmosphere is more positive, then people are much more likely to try, as we saw in our testimonials, to try something imaginative, to try something creative, and to go beyond the comfort of their armchair. Okay, what else do we have? Yes?
Actually, probably sort of links on to what you just said there, but the idea of self-determination, and then through that, control, so having control of what you do yourself.
Absolutely. So we have, I like that word, self-determination. And a word that I use a lot for control is, of course, autonomy, which is very easy to say. And this is another key part of standing out and of our group, is that nobody will disagree with autonomy. It's a concept that everybody will say, yes, every translator should decide for themselves. But of course, you just have to look around any of the many other groups, and you'll see people who will agree conceptually with autonomy, but are living out something very different in their own lives because they're talking about this agency that's dumped on them or this person that's mistreated them. So they're not being autonomous, even though intellectually, yes, everyone's for autonomy. Yes.
I think I was
Betty.
going to call the same thing something like encouraging people to be quite uncompromisingly true to themselves.
Absolutely. So again, I think it's worth giving a point of its soul. And truth to yourself takes many different formats. It means in the kind of clients you want to work with, the kind of texts you want to work in, the kind of rates. There is no standard rate that everybody should have. Some people have more financial ambition. Some people are quite happy to roll along. It also involves whether you work with agencies or direct clients. And I think on Standing Out, we've managed to get rid entirely of any kind of hierarchy of agency or premium good, everything else less good. Also in terms of the way we divide up our own time. And this is a journey that I've had to go on because at the beginning, all I wanted to do was to be Chris Durbin. And then when I saw what Chris Durbin is capable of, I thought, well, you're never going to be Chris Durbin. And after that, there was a slight feeling of, okay, well, if I can't be the best, then what's the point of anything? But then you kind of think, well, yeah, but you've got different sides. You know, you can write, or you can teach, or you can do many, many other things. And so it's again, something that's quite easy to say, truth to yourself. But we've seen a few examples of people pushing that, and it's something that you grow into over time. Very important. Okay. Yes, Francis.
Inspiration. So while, like you said before, it's not really anybody's job to try, and you don't want to go in trying to emulate anybody else, but it's surprising sometimes when someone offers up their experiences or where they're going with something, how it sort of lights a light bulb over your own head and you go, oh, I haven't even thought about an avenue of your own and how that might tie into your own story and your own background.
Fantastic. Okay. Joao. Did I pronounce that right?
Can you say that again?
Joao.
Again, please.
You said.
Perfect. I think Standing Out stands for, where is that? Evolution.
Evolution?
Like an evolution chamber. A small and growing evolutionary chamber.
Okay. Are you talking about change, personal change?
And professional as well.
Okay. So both personal and professional. Okay, that's great. Yes, Ellen.
It's not competitive.
Okay, very important. What number are we on? 10. Thank you. Yes, I think that's extremely important. It's good to give examples if you're making more money or if you're doing well in your life. It's good to show it to other people in the spirit of sharing, but never in the sense of saying, if you're not doing what I'm doing, then you're nowhere. So it's, and I've seen that again, looking around the spectrum, a lot of competition, which often comes, I think, from the competitive person's own personal needs to be one above the others. But in our case, no, I think, and one thing that I'm really surprised at and really delighted at is the kind of shared joy, the opposite of Schadenfreude, whatever that is. Is there an opposite, the German people here, of Schadenfreude? Is there? What's the word for success? For success in German? Erfolgsfreude. No? Does that exist? But whatever it is, well, we've created the concept before the words come about, because I see a huge amount of genuine. Sorry? Absolutely. Yeah. Beteiligungsfreude, I don't know if that exists. But no, a huge amount of genuine enthusiasm for other people's achievements. So much so, talking about non-competitive, that I can write a piece in the morning where I've put heart and soul, and there'll be 10 people who like it, and some people come along and say, I've got the certificate, and 100 people will like it, but we're not competitive, are we? No, but it's great. It's really fantastic to see people taking a genuine pleasure in other people's success. Volker, you had
I would like to go back to what you said earlier, the notion of sunshine and fish.
You heard it here first.
I think comic relief is very important.
Yes. I think, actually, it's a very serious point, comedy, because
actually, comic relief in the sense of relief of stress, stress relief.
Because I think we do have a job being freelancers, which is inherently stressful. You never quite know unless you've got a job for the next 6 months. You never quite know what's going to happen next week. So we're all kind of on that tightrope. And I think, yes, that comedy does play a major role. And one of the things I've noticed about groups which I feel less inclined to join is that there's very little joy or humor. Lots of angst and lots of pressure and competition and very little joking. And I think one of the real strengths of our group, especially with people like Peter and Volker as chief punsters, is that there is this ability to laugh at ourselves, first of all, to laugh at others, and never to take ourselves quite so seriously that we can't joke about things. So that's a very important point. Okay. We're on number 11. Any more? Yes, Ellen.
It's very visual because everybody has to put a picture with it, but in every post a different person would pick a different key point to then put the picture with it. So it's always really interesting to see what somebody would pick as that particular picture.
Exactly. And it's good fun, I think, as Jill once you said. It's good fun going to look for pictures. And I think it does open up a space which isn't just analytical and intellectual. Because we live, as translators, we live in that kind of, in our frontal lobes all the time. We live in analysis and calculation of which word is the best word. And that does open a kind of portal into imagination and creativity. Okay. Any more? Yes.
I was just thinking for all us lone wolf translators, that sense of community as
yes.
well.
Yes.
I would go even further and say, given some of the feedback that I get in my mailbag, almost a sense of family. There are groups out there which will talk about work and do so very well and do so very supportively. But I think the fact that our subjects have ranged beyond software and clients and rates to talking about things like birth, when Paul recently had his daughter, talking about death, talking about old age when I wrote about Brigitte's father. So we are free, especially on weekends, to talk about a whole range of subjects. And that brings people closer together than simply talking about what you're charging to this client. So it opens up that space again for people to share something of themselves, which they wouldn't necessarily share if they were just talking about how to get clients or how to write your CV. Okay. Yes, Jill.
Just following on from that, I think that really gives us a sense of perspective. We all have our ups and downs in our personal and professional lives. And sometimes it's easy to think, oh, poor me, this has happened. And then you read something that perhaps Nora has written from Syria.
Sure.
And you realise how lucky you are. You actually have electricity, you actually have internet, you actually have the basics you need. And your life isn't in danger, and that really...
Sure. She plays a very key role for me. And this morning she did actually write to say hello, specifically to all of you. So, yeah, it's wonderful. Can we make it to 15? Do we have one more? Yes?
We have diversity, meaning that many people from the world share these values.
Okay. We're not, by any means, all translators even on the page. I think the vast majority of those who interact are, but I know for a fact that we've got people from other walks of life. So diversity in every sense. People with huge amount of experience, people with less experience. But the fact is you can't actually tell, usually, who's got more experience than who because of the way they interact. Okay, so I think we've worked up a list of 15 there. Very impressive things which make this group different. Not to say, yes, Natalie?
I just wanted to finish maybe with, I don't know if it's on the list, I can't see very well from here, but generosity. Just, because, it's just sharing ideas, sharing enthusiasm, sharing, it's sharing everything really. And
you didn't get the membership bill? What's coming?
I think it stems from your generosity actually, because you never hesitate to put a post with you're going to share something that's going to be useful. So it may be something that you've discovered or find out about someone, and why don't you do this, or so because you're generous. I think it encourages people to be generous too, and not feel, I know how to get this direct client, or I know how to do this, but I'm not going to tell anyone. So it's my idea. I think because you share, it encourages people to share as well, and you don't feel as protective and threatened. And I think it's nice not to be threatened.
Sure.
And it is the, perhaps the atmosphere of a real office. If we were all put in this room at different desks with different computers, we would walk around and talk to people and share ideas, or share what we've just learned and how we can do this and that. And I think that's important to feel that, or if you say, look, I'm about to give a speech at the Chamber of Commerce, have you got any tips?
Yes.
Suddenly everybody says things and say, I would do this, I would do that, do a PowerPoint, do this, talk to people. I mean, even people like Claire from Atlas Translation replied, and you would have thought she'd keep her information to herself, but she didn't, and it's quite nice to have this.
Absolutely. If this was an office, can you imagine the office party? Who'd end up snogging on the photocopier? But absolutely right. No, I think there is a spirit there of sharing, of generosity, which I don't know if it comes from me, but it's certainly very present within the group now, and that's a wonderful thing. So I think that I wouldn't say that any of these doesn't exist in any other group, but I think in this particular combination, it's fairly unique. I have been pulled up now and again for suggesting that this group is different from others, but I'm fairly confident in saying that it is, especially in its combination of all of these things in one space. Great. So that's where we've got to so far. In the last part, I'd like us to think a little bit about, and we've started off recently with some very interesting new ideas, which again came from out of the blue, the idea of the exchange, which is going extremely well, which is a group for those who are new, where people can make translation partners or form masterminds, and I've already had news of some of these initiatives getting underway, and also post jobs for other translators, okay, with all the caveats and the qualifications that have to go with that. But nevertheless, where people can share and even maybe bypass having to go through agencies, but boutique agencies are good, of course, which we, without naming any. But so where people can do that, and then standing out travel, which is, again, came from somebody in the group, I think, where people can say, I'm off to Paris next weekend, anyone coming out to play, which is great. And again, it started off, it's a small number at the moment, but the energy in that group is very significant, and that's going to take off as well. I've already found people to play with when I go to Lisbon. I don't know if you found somebody when you were going to Oslo. No, there's nobody. As far as I know, we don't have any Norwegians. Yes. We have no Norwegians in the group. There's a few countries that we need to work on, like Mozambique is another one. Papua New Guinea.
I'm going to find them for you.
Sorry?
I'm going to find some.
Do that. That'd be wonderful. Okay, what I'd like us to do last of all is to discuss a little bit together, maybe again 2 or 3 people without turning around this time, what other possible avenues we could explore in the future. Growth is one of them, but it's not the most important. For me, intensifying the links between the group is more important than doubling the size of the group, even though I'm always happy to see people joining, because I think when people join, this message reaches more people. So it's always good news, but the drive isn't for intense growth. It's more for creating a richer experience for the people who are already in the group. We're going to hit about 2,000 very soon. We're on 1949, not that I keep count, but 1949 today, or 1948. So within a week or so, if current rates carry on, we might well reach 2,000, and then obviously beyond that. And the bigger the group grows, the more people find out about it. Excellent. So just brainstorm together without having to make too much of a strategic plan. Just a couple of things where you feel that we could explore, and just see what comes out of this. But just for 5 or so minutes. 2 or 3 people.
Somebody out for some reason. And it's actually a lot easier to do marketing when you've got somebody to egg you on, mutually. So you set yourself targets for contacting potential clients.
Like promoting the profession. Promoting the profession, right? Not amongst ourselves. That's interesting. But yes, we already all promote the profession.
Like where people could drop in and out of, or just for a daily charge, just so you've got somebody to bounce ideas on.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea, but it's probably easier to organise in a forum like Standing Out as opposed to through official ITI channels, for instance.
Yeah.
So would you call that a mentor? It's not a mentoring approach, is it? Because it's
well, it's interesting. I don't know how many men there are here. 10 maybe. Yeah. The language industry is really totally dominated by women, isn't it?
And it's got to be about the only one of the only ones it is.
Yeah, sort of nursing maybe, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a bit broader. This is very specific to maybe 2 people working, deciding that they need to market their services better, they need to find other clients and work out a plan and set themselves targets over a period of months and just check with each other that they're doing their targets. Because when you're working on your own, it's very easy to postpone.
Wonderful. Okay, do we have any ideas? The first one I put up here already, which is this new thing, this idea of special interest groups.
Not cigarettes.
Not?
Not cigarettes.
No. That would be quite badly spelled if it was cigarettes. So yes, special interest groups are these little groups, which might be as few as 10, 20 people, but with a common language or a common interest or specialization, which they can then explore, because we're making a distinction between posts which are valid for everyone, and all newbie questions, for example, are valid for everyone, but posts about legal or scientific translation, or posts about the intricacies of Japanese to English translation might well, or not, we'll see, spark other groups to have, they're probably meeting already, but part of it is to keep fostering what Seth Godin, the great Seth Godin, calls the connection economy, which is all to do with making links between people, networking, and this is a great example of that today. So the SIGs are one possible avenue forward for us to explore more of this. Yes, Lucy.
Philippa and I were suggesting that you have quite a lot of influence in the translation world,
And one of the things that many of the institute, the professional bodies and established translators struggle to do is to persuade the world out there what it is we do. We're a profession, but most people don't realise that they think we're just a sort of humanised Google Translate. And I think there's opportunity and an opening for maybe going out to our clients, the world in general, and explaining what it is translators do and how it is that we're not just people who sit and do Google Translate.
Okay.
And the kind of work and the research and the training that goes into producing an excellent translation and why they should have it.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's quite an important thing. To what extent that role is already being played by people like Chris, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people speaking about this, but I think, yes, there's definitely a role for that. As for how influential this group is, it's difficult to know. I mean, you see this possibly because you have a wider vision. I think it's very influential within the group. We've seen examples of that. But I do sometimes wonder, when I go to a conference, and it happens quite a lot, and people kind of look at you and think, and they say, never heard of you. And of course, why should they have? But then you realize that within our group, you can have a big influence. How much the group has of an influence on the wider industry, I really don't know. I'm intrigued. I suspect it's growing. But I think that's a great idea. So reaching out to people beyond
translation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Yes, Rob.
Just building on that last point, that's one of my little bugbears, for want of a better phrase, for a lot of official translation associations and groups and stuff, is that it becomes a little bit insular, a little bit of an echo chamber, where you go to conferences, or, I mean, as much as I've enjoyed today, it's fantastic, but you go to some conferences and you have translators talking to other translators about how wonderful translation and translators is. That's great, but there's a world out there, and we
absolutely. Yeah. I think
so
that
anything that can be done in that direction, whether through us or through any other groups, is much needed.
Yes. Okay, so the translation ambassadors, I think, is what you're talking about in a sense. Transambassadors. Yes,
sharing of resources like dictionaries and glossaries. I have, for instance, a Bundessprachenamt glossary of military terminology, multilingual. Now, I have to be careful how I share that, but if people had a particular military term in German, French, and I think Russian, then that might be something I could help with.
Right, that's a great idea. How you share that is you put it in a brown paper bag, you put it next to the second post box on the left.
Absolutely.
Back in the good old days.
In a safe house.
In a safe house, absolutely. And you wait for the code word, yes.
What about sharing events, or maybe organising mini local events between colleagues, for a networking lunch or coffee, probably on a smaller size than this one, but locally where you don't have to travel that far, but still meet and share and exchange, although virtual reality and the group is great, but sometimes there's nothing like a face-to-face contact. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to take off much more now with the exchange, because we're already seeing people, Angie, for example, who linked up with Beth to go to a local school. So I think people, if you're in Standing Out, then everybody. I'm a little surprised that there's 500 in the forum, which is still great after a week, in the exchange, and 2,000 on the group. It'd be quite good to have everybody who's in the group at least joining in that and meeting up with people, or in travel. Maybe people who have got established working patterns don't necessarily want either a mastermind or a partner, or to outsource jobs, in which case they might not find what they're looking for in the exchange, and that's fine. But those people could also join travel, because we all travel. Every single one of us likes to go to places, and I can't imagine anything better than turning up in Lisbon, as I'm going to do in 3 weeks' time, and have 3 people from the group there to show me around and buy drinks for me. Okay. Anything else? Yes?
Another idea from Maria next to me was, and I'm not sure whether people feel this is perhaps duplication of what's happening already in translation associations, for example, mentoring. People offering their experienced translators offering their help and support and advice to people who are fairly new to the profession.
Yeah, we came up with that one as well. But mentoring there are so many different areas that we could do that in. I mean, we've got coaching, we've got translation in itself, we've got the language, perhaps we've got business skills. We've got lots of different areas that we could be mentoring newcomers in, or people who are established but feel that certain parts of their business need strengthening.
Would that be within the exchange, or would that be a separate group?
As long as it's within Standing Out, I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we could either add it to what's already the exchange, which has partners, and the dividing line between a translation partner and a mentor can be a blurred one, or whether we start another group. It's a good idea. Okay.
Following on from that, I wondered about a buddy group. And I don't know whether this crosses over with exchange again, but I'm thinking of buddying up the way that Nelia Falun and Cécile Geoffrin have done in their marketing. I think that's a really excellent way of motivating each other to achieve a certain goal. It doesn't have to be marketing, it could be in learning a new specialism or anything like that.
Sure,
so potentially that might be one.
Like the mastermind.
Yes,
is it the same as that?
There's overlap between the two, but I think it's a great point. What about more events? Would you be interested in traveling to places like Milan, for example, to have more get-togethers? Yes.
I think you were already proposing that a Standing Out event, Standing Out at Cannes event every year.
Oh, definitely.
Even twice a year. I mean,
thrice a year.
I could envisage doing, because there was a photograph last night posted by Natalie where there was a big discussion immediately about shall the next one be in Maastricht, which isn't a place which has until now excited me, but I could be persuaded. But there could easily be 2 of these a year, in the spring and in the autumn. There's nothing to stop it. The only thing to stop us.
I mean, I would say 5 or something months.
Then it gets into budget, I think, for a lot of people. And also into organisation. But the organisation side is actually pretty easy. The people here were extremely accommodating. What I'm going to do is to ask, I think from next week, anyone who's interested in having one in their city to find me a place. Because it's finding this place which took a few hours, and it's a great place. But it's that takes the legwork. Phoning up and talking about catering and stuff isn't that difficult. But it's identifying, especially in a city I've never been to. You know, in Lisbon, for example, I wouldn't know even where to begin. But if there are local people who can identify a place and a caterer and set that up, then yeah, I'm happy to fly in first class EasyJet, wherever they'll take me. Yeah. But certainly mini events, you know, which don't have to be so many people and which don't have to include me, obviously can take place, can spring up like mushrooms wherever. Okay. Any other? Yes?
Hi. I think it would be great to explore the marketing and management area of translation, because I do mostly those things, and I'm still beginning, and sometimes I have some doubts, and I don't have any education in that, so I think it would be nice. A nice compliment to the other great things these people said.
That's something that's kind of creeping in, which is very heartening to me, because at the beginning we began talking only about values and attitudes, and what's happening now is that people are kind of saying, I've got this contract, shall I sign it? So in a sense, it's opening up, even though the majority of the posts are still about the kind of things they've always been about. But we are opening up in terms of content, and I think absolutely marketing and management are 2 very important things, which we've kind of steered clear of because other groups did that. But I'm more than happy to hoover up all the possible subjects and to cover them. Okay. Brilliant. So we have plenty to think about as we go into the future. No, I think we have the benefits there of the community, we have the benefits of connection, lots of ideas generating. And I think what we're learning from all of this is that people are very, very important in this process. All of those developments that I talked about in my own story, especially the second part from 2013 till today, have come about because of people. And the more open we are and the more vulnerable we make ourselves, the more people are likely to step in and help. I had, before we did the Paris book event last year, I was planning to launch this thing on the page and then scuttle away and hope that people would can go and buy the book. But it was Eleanor Teal who popped up and said, no, you should make this into a launch. And that again came from left field, came out of nowhere. And I think the more we say about ourselves, one of the things that I'm really glad is that the idea of shameless self-promotion, which is such a collocation in the translation world, is being gradually expunged from Standing Out, because all self-promotion, as long as it's not look at me, which would be boring, but all self-promotion is encouraged, and everyone is encouraged to say what they want, what they're about, what they need, and how the other groups the other members of the group can step in and offer help. So I think that's a great development, a great strength of the group. Because it takes me back to the beginning. I talked about Africa and my lentil story. I can never forget the first weekend when I arrived in Africa. I was 33 and had just started, no I wasn't, I was 29, very young, and just started in this new school, wanted to make a really good impression. And on my first day of teaching, there was my class waiting for me in a kind of stone hut. All of these buildings were really kind of very remote and very simple. And I rushed down to the store. And the storekeeper, after the headmaster, was the most important person in the school because he had these desperately scarce resources. And I rushed in and I said something like, his name was Debesai. I said, hi Debesai, I need 3 books and 2 pencils because I'm off to class now. And he said, sit down a minute. So I thought, okay, I really have to go because I'm Western and my timing is very important. I can't be late for my first class. He said, you've asked for your pencils and of course you'll have them, but on the first time you've come into my office, what you should do and what we do around here is you ask me how I am. And then you ask me how my family is. And then you say to me, how was your weekend? And then we chat a little bit. We maybe have some tea. And then you ask for your pencils. Okay? And he was very kind. He became a great, great friend over 2 years. But it was a really valuable lesson for me about putting people first. And I think that's one of the greatest strengths of this group, is that we're about putting people first, about serving other people. Obviously, on the understanding that we can do that best when we serve ourselves also at the same time. But those are key elements of the group. And also things that I'd like you to take away from today. And also that metaphor I came back to at the beginning about the radio. Think about all the radio stations you have in you, all the different frequencies you can turn into when you leave here today, and ask yourself, do you want to keep on the same one, which is an option, or do you want to go out and explore different sides of you, different radio stations? That's what I wanted to say today. Before I finish, I'd also like to thank a person who's been extremely important in my life, and a lot of these ideas have come from this marvelous person, Brigitte. So can you give her a big round of applause? Who gave me access to a lot of the thinkers who've influenced me and a lot of the people. And we talk about these things. We talk about you every single day until the poor woman is totally fed up of standing out. Sometimes she says, can we please have a standing out free day? But not often. So it's been with me on this amazing journey so far. And I think we're at the beginning of something, not the end. And I really hope that we'll keep on building this, what we're doing together. Thank you. I have indeed.
I feel very brave to take the microphone from Andrew. I think he might come and attack me to get it back very quickly. So I'm going to keep this very short. I just wanted to say, officially, on behalf of all of us here, thank you for such a wonderful day today. Andrew, it's been wonderful to actually put names to faces and meet you in the flesh. A few of us put our heads together. Peter, Alison, Angie thought we'd like to buy a gift for Andrew just to show our appreciation. So we came up with some very great ideas for luxurious, extravagant gifts that we thought would really reflect the effort that Andrew puts into standing out. But then Wales beat England in the rugby. So we just got you this. It's only a very small token, but it's from everyone that's standing out, not just everybody here today, but from all the 1948. Very small token, but given with big thanks and big love from all of us for everything that you do.
So thank you so much for making the time to come in today. It's been really, really nice to meet you. Some of you I've met before, some for the first time, hopefully not for the last time. I hope you've enjoyed meeting each other and enjoyed the afternoon that we've had. So thank you very much. Have a safe journey home, wherever you're going back to, and see you hopefully at the next one, which may well be in Maastricht or in Milan. We'll see. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.